I worked the night shift as a security guard at an old, abandoned theater in the heart of the city. The place had been closed for decades, but the owners wanted someone to keep an eye on it. I thought it would be an easy job, just walking around, checking doors, and staying awake. But I was wrong. The theater was massive, with rows of dusty seats, a stage covered in moth-eaten curtains, and a balcony that creaked with every step. The air was thick with the smell of mildew, and the silence was deafening. My flashlight barely cut through the darkness, and the shadows seemed to move when I wasn't looking. Around 2 a.m., I was making my rounds when I heard it. A faint applause coming from the auditorium. My heart skipped a beat. The theater was supposed to be empty. I followed the sound, my flashlight shaking in my hand, until I reached the stage. The curtains were moving. I stood there, frozen, as the applause grew louder, more distinct. It sounded like a full audience, clapping and cheering, but the seats were empty. The stage lights flickered on, casting an eerie glow over the stage. That's when I saw them. Figures, shadowy and translucent, sitting in the seats. I turned to run, but the doors slammed shut behind me. The applause turned to laughter, loud and mocking, echoing through the auditorium. I could feel hands grabbing at me, cold and bony, pulling me toward the stage. I don't know how I got out, but I remember stumbling into the lobby, my uniform torn and my skin covered in scratches. The next day, I quit. I couldn't go back. A few weeks later, I found out the theater had been the site of a tragic fire decades ago. The audience had been trapped inside, and the building had been closed ever since. I still hear the applause sometimes, late at night, and I wonder, were they trying to warn me? Or were they looking for someone to join their performance? It was late at night, and I was on the last train home. The car was almost empty, just me and a few other passengers scattered throughout. I was sitting by the window, staring out at the passing lights, when I noticed him, a man sitting across from me. He was tall, with a long black coat and a wide-brimmed hat that shadowed his face. Something about him made my skin crawl, but I told myself I was just being paranoid. The train rattled on, and I tried to ignore him, but I could feel his eyes on me. I glanced up, and that's when I saw it. His face. It was pale, almost gray, with hollow eyes and a twisted smile. I looked away, my heart pounding, and when I glanced back, he was gone. The seat across from me was empty. I told myself it was just my imagination, but a few stops later, I saw him again. This time, sitting a few rows behind me. He was staring at me, his smile even wider. I got off at the next stop, even though it wasn't my station. I waited on the platform, watching as the train pulled away. That's when I saw him again, standing in the window of the train, still smiling. I never found out who or what he was, but I still see him sometimes in my dreams, and I wonder if he's still out there, waiting for me. I worked the night shift as a janitor at an old, forgotten library on the edge of town. The place had been abandoned for years, but the city wanted someone to keep it clean. I thought it would be an easy job, just sweeping floors and dusting shelves, but I was wrong. The library was massive, with towering bookshelves and long, dark hallways. The air was thick with the smell of old paper and dust, and every step I took echoed through the empty building. My flashlight barely cut through the darkness, and the shadows seemed to move when I wasn't looking. Around 3 a.m., I was cleaning the main reading room when I heard it, a faint whispering coming from the shelves. My heart skipped a beat. The library was supposed to be empty. I followed the sound, my flashlight shaking in my hand, until I reached the far corner of the room. The books were moving. I stood there, frozen, as the books slid off the shelves one by one, landing in a pile on the floor. The whispering grew louder, more distinct. It sounded like voices, faint and garbled, like they were speaking in a language I couldn't understand. I turned to run, but the doors slammed shut behind me. The whispering turned to screams, loud and piercing, echoing through the library. I could feel hands grabbing at me, cold and bony, pulling me toward the shelves. I don't know how I got out, but I remember stumbling into the lobby, my uniform torn and my skin covered in scratches. The next day, I quit. I couldn't go back. A few weeks later, I found out the library had been the site of a tragic accident decades ago. A group of students had been trapped inside during a fire, and the building had been closed ever since. I still hear the whispers sometimes, late at night, and I wonder, were they trying to warn me? Or were they looking for someone to join their story? If you ever hear something in the dark, don't stay to find out what it is, because sometimes they're not just sounds. If these stories sent chills down your spine, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more terrifying tales. And remember, the night shift isn't always as quiet as it seems.